One of the great graces of life as a priest has been the opportunity to assist at people's weddings, to be part of their pledge to each other of their whole life together. And weddings are crazy events. They are so elaborate and wonderful, and even the simplest of weddings is filled with anxiety and worry. And yet, at the moment it begins, it is always a time of blessing. It is the most human time, because it is a moment in which people give themselves to each other and say, somehow, through God's mercy and grace, we will live together. And more than that, we will bring our families together and somehow become one family. And I have never been a part of a wedding in which something did not go wrong. I always tell brides, as I say, something will go wrong. Fortunately, usually it's something that I do, so they don't have to worry too much about it. But always there's something. I remember growing up and hearing stories of my uncle passing out on the altar with my father, or being present actually when various things have happened in various situations where the groom gets stuck at home and was left in a hotel once, or the father of the bride had a seizure. He was fine later, but he had a seizure at the rehearsal dinner and did not make the wedding, so things got changed there. There's always something. And those are the stories you end up telling, because they too shape the experience. They, in fact, sometimes are the most memorable part of the experience, because they tell us of what is human. For human life is not perfectly rehearsed. Human life is fraught with these little twists and turns, sometimes terrible things, sometimes small things, but always with changes, transformations, things that challenge us. So where is it that Christ comes to reveal himself for the first time? Where is it that he chooses to do his first miracle? Although some would say he didn't really choose it because his mother kind of nags him into it. But it really is a choice, and it shows who Jesus is. He comes to this place to begin to reveal his glory, and he comes to that most human of moments. The place where young people are giving themselves to each other, where they are beginning a life and transforming a life, with all the bumps and bruises that will entail, with all the craziness of families being brought together. And Jesus comes into this place, as he comes into this world, filled with its brokenness, filled with its imperfection, filled with our desire for greatness and the reality of loss. This is where Jesus comes. This is who Jesus is. This is where the miracle of Jesus begins. When I was a young priest, a very young priest, a friend of mine who I had known for some time, a woman with whom I had worked, who was a mother and a great minister, a really lovely person and a great heart, who I had always known for her generosity and her goodness, came to me to speak to me. And we were in my office and we started talking, and suddenly she began to weep. And I leaned forward and I took her hand and I said, what's the matter? What's the matter? She goes, I've never told you this, but when I was 18 years old, all alone and lost and afraid of all that would happen to me, I became pregnant and I had an abortion. It was the brokenness of her life. And the tears flowed from her, and she leaned into me, and we held each other's hands, and we talked. And we talked about what her life became. Her life was forsaken and desolate, as the first reading speaks of. She thought of herself as one lost and broken. She faced this moment not as a moment of choice, but really as a moment of fear and desperation. It was a moment she remembered when she was so afraid of being poor and outcast, of being left alone, that she turned that way. And she said it came back to her later when she had her own children and realized what she had given up, what she had lost. And she said her life had been changed. And somehow she had prayed, she had gone always, but it always was with her. It was with her as a call to do good things on behalf of the child she had lost. She had failed. Our lives are touched by these broken moments. And yet, we come to our God in the midst of this world, this wedding, this mixture of all sorts of things. And we are like dishwater. Like the dishwater, the washing water that Jesus filled those pitchers with. And then the grace of God comes upon us. The grace of a God who enters our world filled with brokenness and transforms the mere water of our lives into wine for the celebration, into a gift that makes the party, the world, complete. That allows, like that couple was allowed, never to see failure, never to know the brokenness of their own wedding, to know that they would continue to be a gift to the other people who gathered there. So we too become that gift through God's grace. Our world is filled with brokenness, not just abortion, but murder and war and violence and guns, the separation of the races, the division of nations. All of this, like the empty jugs that threaten to destroy the world that God has given us. And Christ enters right there and blesses the water of our lives and transforms us into wine for the feast. We are made today to build the celebration, to complete the wedding feast, which is the kingdom of God, which is the reign of God. We are blessed today so that our lives, no matter how plain they have been, no matter how they have been spoiled or not enough, to allow God to come into our lives and to make it enough, to make it a gift to the people, to make it a sign of the union, to make it a part of the feast and the celebration, to bless the people of God with what we have become through God's grace. The world we see out there is so messy and so broken, so many mistakes, so many failures, so much violence and hurt. And yet we who are blessed can change that. We who are filled with the Spirit of God, the Spirit that is given to each one, we can transform this into the wedding feast. Through the mercy of Jesus Christ, through the grace of God. Let us allow ourselves to breathe deep in that Spirit. Let us allow ourselves to be poured out as the best wine, the wine given to the union of couples, to the union of people, to the celebration of the Word and the life of God among us.